For those of you who were here last week, or for those of you who weren't, hardly matters. Last week, the title of the talk was, "The Law is Perfected in Love." And in essence, in two sentences, because I won't go back there, Swamiji started out explaining a little bit about the laws that were given to the Jewish people as they came out of slavery and bondage in Egypt and needed very clear laws. But then he goes on, and with the reading from the Bible last week, shows how if we live according to absolute physical laws too much, too long, paying attention to every detail, in fact, that ability to intuitively perceive anything is lost, because we cannot be receiving intuition. We can't be living in that place of expanded consciousness when we're using primarily our mind. It's a beautiful reading from last week, and it also, as I was saying last week, I developed a new respect for the Jewish people and what they needed, and how in their deep desire to know God, they were actually willing to live according to the 10 Commandments and 600 and some other laws. So it was all good. God knew what he was doing in the moment. The Jews were headed in the right direction. And that was for last week. But ultimately, Jesus and Swamiji were saying to us, the law is perfected in love, that we can't live in terms of this black and white, now I have to do this, now I have to do that. I have to remember to open the door a certain way. I need to turn a few times before I can sit down. I have to wash my hands in a certain way. One time, you can see 600 and some laws will keep your mind engaged. Now, this week, we come to this truly exquisite reading about the perfection of love. This reading, Swamiji said it so beautifully when he says it's one of the, I don't have it here, but one of the most beautiful things ever written on, or the most exciting, I forget his words, darn it, I wish I had them, whoever has the book, but he comments on the extraordinary nature of that chapter and experiencing cosmic consciousness from Autobiography of a Yogi. It's thrilling when you read that. And Yogananda manages to, they're getting the book for me, but the moment has passed. And Yogananda then manages, as he does with that beautiful poem, Samadhi, which is on the wall in the very back. If you haven't read it, you might stop on your way out and read it. He takes that experience of oneness with the divine, that experience of when our little soul is comes into a oneness with the infinite spirit, that experience of what we call samadhi, superconsciousness, all of these words that we use to describe it, perfect divine love. And he manages to explain it for us in a way that we actually, after we've read it a few times, we begin to think that we could imagine having that experience. We read it again and again, and somehow we're lifted up out of our minds, away from the laws, And when you've read the poem Samadhi many, many times, you feel yourself being drawn into the energy of it, that story, that experience told by an avatar who visits there regularly. He wrote that poem riding up and back on a bus or subway through New York City, through New York City. He was on the subway. I don't know how many of you have ever been on the subway in New York City. You would not think that you could have anywhere near that kind of an experience. But he did, and the poem came through. And that's exactly what just happened with this reading from today. I cognized the center of the Empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my own heart. That is so beautiful. After he's described the infinite nature of the divine, he's described it in so many ways, crashing on endless shores in terms of light, in terms of sound. It's infinite, it's never ending, it's ever new. And then he says, there it was, at the point of intuitive perception in my own heart. Now, Yogananda did not write that saying, I have the experience of God in my heart, and that's the only place it will ever be. He wrote it to say to us, it resides, the pure love of God. And, well, the pure love of God resides in that point of intuitive perception in all of our hearts. Imagine that in every one of our hearts. And then he says in some words, and from that place, I was connected with the entire universe. And we too can say, and from that place, that point, we are connected with everything in the universe, because everything comes from that same manifestation of divine love, divine perfection. It's an extraordinary notion when you let it in, and it begins to instantaneously changes all of how we see life, all of how we might be living life, all of the possibility and the goal, the extraordinary goal of being able to cognize that point of intuitive perception, ourself, and to be living in perfect love, where all laws, all rules, all of what we think has been guiding us and is important, where all of that is perfected. It's such a beautiful truth and knowing that is handed to us. This has been it's been one of those remarkable weeks here at Ananda, because so many events, classes, things have happened this past week that point to this, that I felt today to share the gift that has been given to us of truth, of how to begin to live in a state of divine love and divinely loving through Swami Kriyananda. I was amazed as I looked over the week, and I've had many weeks over the years at Ananda, but somehow I saw this week so many of the different ways that Swami Kriyananda lived his life perfectly dedicated to sharing teachings that we might never have had access to because they weren't in front of us or because we could have never understood them. That all of what he did in this life, I've said it before, every book he wrote, every song he wrote, that beautiful song that David sang so beautifully, Home is a Green Hill. Really, what's it saying? God's all the way out there, and God's all the way in here. And then the whispers that James chose to read today, which could not have been more perfect, speaking about, I will spend every moment of my life doing all that I can do to rid myself of the hold that ego has on me. And I will do that over and over and over until I see beyond the real frailty and transparency of the ego to you. It was a beautiful reading. And then, of course, what Swami Kriyananda wrote. But I want to just share little tidbits of the whole week with you so that we can all come together and realize all of the ways that we are being handed to learn what is the essential truth that's being shared here. That the purpose of every religion is to find union with God. That the purpose of every religion is to ultimately be able to commune with God. And this is what Master came to show us and how he came to show us this right now, right at this time when he could come, when so many more people, as I said last week, would have ears to hear. And then his direct disciple picked it up right where he left off when he left his body and showed it to us over and over. So earlier this week, I was invited to give one of the talks in Raja Yoga that is called the Path, The Paths of Yoga. And it's the second chapter in this 14-chapter work that Swamiji wrote. And it describes the different paths of yoga. Now, it's essential to know that yoga means union. It means the union of this little individual soul with that one great, superconscious, ever-present, ever-new state of consciousness. That's what yoga means. So each of these paths of yoga, and we all come in with various we come in certainly with inclinations, and we're more or less, those of you who were at the class heard me say this, we have different strengths, but we all have some of each of the three paths in us. But all of the paths that make up how we move along to come to that place of yoga, of union. That's the journey that we're on. That's what everything in our lives is about. So if we look at Bhakti Yoga, which is a path of devotion, in the book, Swamiji beautifully talks about how in that path, on that path, for those of us, and I say us consciously because I'm one of them, who are bhakti yogis, who came in, that's very easy to open our hearts to feel devotion, but it's a slippery slope because it can get very emotional. That's where the ego comes in. That's where likes and dislikes come in. And if we back up for a minute and we look at Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the second sutra that says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirod, yoga, that place of union with the one God, is the neutralization of all of the feelings in the heart. In other words, it takes away the ego when there is perfect stillness in the heart. Not, I love this, I don't like that. Gee, I'm great today, now I'm horrible. This looked like it was perfect a week ago, but now I'm devastated by it. We've all been there. We all know. I fall madly in love with this person. What did I think I was seeing in this person? It just goes on and on because we're human. So there's all of this feeling in the heart. Yoga is the stilling of all of that. It is that place that is so still that one comes to being able to perceive or have that intuitive perception. That is yoga. That is what this question is asking. Can man see God? Or can God be seen? And the answer, as Swamiji said, is yes, absolutely. Once we get to that place of stillness in our heart. So if we're following this path of bhakti yoga, we soon begin to see it's not who we love, it's not what we love. Those become actually inconsequential, but it's how we love. If we love seeing God in everything and everyone, if we love with our hearts stilled, calm, and we bring that aspect of divine love to every situation in our lives, then we can use that path to come to yoga. Karma yogis, people who love to serve in the world, it's not what they're doing, it's how they're doing it. It doesn't matter what the chore is, the task. You've all heard me, or many of you anyway, tell this story of Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who founded the first hospice hospital. The very first employee that she hired was a cleaning lady from the hospital that she was working in. Why did she do that? Because she saw in that woman the ability to serve with such a pure heart. She was scrubbing floors and wiping off the tables at the bedside in a hospital room. And she herself was amazed when Kubler-Ross asked her to join her. She said, I'm a cleaning lady. Kubler-Ross said, no, you're not, because we are not. And that is, again, one of the main points of these readings. We're not our ego, we're not our bodies, we're not all of the thousands to millions of self-definitions that we have. We are this divine energy that's beyond all of that. And, as I said before, the purpose of all religions, of all spiritual paths, is to realize that again. And then if we speak about Jnana Yoga, and this was the whole chapter, and it was so lovely reviewing it. If you're a Jnana Yogi and you come in loving to use your mind to discern things, you work your way towards truth with your mind. It's not how many truths you discover. That's not what it's about. It's, do you actually get to the point of discovering that one truth, that we are the divine, that we are exactly the first technique that we teach when we teach here, when we teach meditation, Hang Sa. I am that. I am spirit. I am the divine. That's what Jnana Yogis are going for. So we spent this glorious night looking at the paths of yoga so beautifully described by Swamiji, saying to us, you can actually live with right attitude, with right action, no matter which of these paths that you're on, and you will see God. Yes, you will. Because there are many ways to talk about seeing God. Yoga is, in fact, seeing God. Divinely loving is seeing God. Discovering that point of intuitive perception is seeing God. Yesterday we had a little vow initiation here. There were very few of us that attended, but there was a woman who took the brahmachari vow. Now, some years ago now, I believe it was 2009, but I think it was, but it could have been before that, Swami Kriyananda created what is called the Nayaswami order. It's a whole new way of looking at renunciation and the monastic way of life. And it's a whole way that Swami Kriyananda could do because he was a direct disciple of Yogananda and he was listening. And he knew that many of us, all of us for that matter, can take one of the vows in the Nayaswami order, because the pilgrim vow is open to everyone. Basically, it says, I am a pilgrim on this spiritual path. I'm walking the path. I want to get closer to God. I want to know God. Well, most of us who are in this room would love to take that vow. And then there's the Tyagi, then the Brahmachari, and then the Nayaswami vow. But that whole order came into being with Swami Kriyananda guiding us and saying to us, here are vows that will guide you in this day, in this age, not thinking that what we are relinquishing is attachment only to those things in the outward world, in the material world. You could starve yourself to death and never become a yogi. You could walk around in the world naked for the rest of your life and never become a yogi. Many people do these things. Many people live with very little money, with very little material possession. They're not yogis, necessarily yogis. Swamiji said, I'm going to create an order of renunciates, for people who are looking for a monastic way of life that suits the truth as we know it today, that suits the truth and allows us to move closer to the truth, to live the truth that we're talking about in this reading, that will allow us to see God. Yet again, a chapter from Raja Yoga, then these beautiful vows. The first line of the vow that both Tyagis take and the people who are taking the Brahmacharya vow says, I understand and fully accept that the true purpose of life for all human beings is to seek God. It's such a beautiful line. I understand it. I accept it. This is my life now. Living that, the true purpose of life is to seek God. And the vow goes on, but all of the vows, everything in this vow, it's created for people who are living, as I said before, with right attitude. Those of us who desperately want to do what James was reading about with that beautiful whispers, whatever number it was, one something, we should all memorize it and read it. It's saying, and in such a beautiful and gentle yet powerful way, spiritually powerful way, I will not let this ego sidetrack me. This is not what life is about. It's not why I reincarnated. It's not what I want to be doing. I want to get to know God. I want to live in a state of transcendence. I don't want to just not be attached to the things of the world. I'm going to go much deeper than that. I'm going to relinquish any and all hold that the ego has on me. That's what the paths of yoga are about. That's what every one of these vows in this Nayaswami order is about. That's what we'll have a discipleship vow today. That's what discipleship is all about. It's saying, I'm going to live differently than I've ever lived before. This is what I'm committing to. We had a Kriya initiation here, Kriya Yoga initiation. There was a master, I don't remember who said this now, it doesn't matter, that Kriya Yoga is the fastest, most direct, clearest path to God for those who would genuinely seek, because it works directly on the energy in the spine. You see, I lived this week from a class to a Kriya initiation to a vow to this beautiful reading. And I thought, we have to be turning our back on all of this to not be able to make extraordinary progress in this life. Because we have such a gift in both Yogananda, in these masters, and in Swami Kriyananda. Everything he ever brought to us. Read any whispers, read any book Swamiji wrote, read any of the vows, listen to the music. They're entertaining, that's for sure. They're thrilling, that's for sure. They're enthralling, that's for sure. But more than anything, they put us squarely and directly in line with saying whatever it is I need to do to slowly but surely let go of this ego. I'll end with this now. There's a daily little calendar that gets sent out by Ananda Village, what happened in the life of Paramahansa Yogananda on this date in different years. And they list different years. He did this, he did that. Well, in 1948, on this date, Yogananda started the first, what would become, World Brotherhood colonies. He started it at Encinitas in 1948. It's so thrilling to think, that's not that far back when you think lifetimes, but it's 73 years back. And easy for me to do the calculations, because I was born just a little bit before that, where he was saying, live in community, be a part of community. Choose the people that you spend time with thoughtfully, carefully, because they will either help you on your path or they will hinder you on your path. And believe me, we all have people in our lives who can do both. So even that, even reading that this morning, I thought, we are so loved. We are so loved. We are so cared for. It is so much easier and more realistic than we think to open our hearts, let these masters enter, and then know that place of pure divine love that is waiting for us to discover it. Here's Yogananda's definition of self-realization. Self-realization is the knowing in all parts of body, mind, and soul that you are now, this moment. He didn't say it. It's the eternal now that was spoken of in our reading. It's the eternal now that's at that point of intuitive perception in every one of our hearts. In all parts of body, mind, and soul, that you are now in possession, of the kingdom of God. That you do not have to pray that it come to you, that God's omnipresence is your omnipresence, and that all you need to do is improve your knowing. God bless you all.
Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Teach my heart to impart everywhere your delight. Sing of moon rays on the rain, sing that love's not in vain. Every grief, every wrong has its ending in song. Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Teach all men how to spin clouds of blue into light. Without silence, what is song? Without night, where is dawn? Were it not for men's woes, who would smile at our rose? Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Let each tone silence grow, earth and heaven unite. Morning laughter, evening tears, snow and blossoms, all fade. Joy must sing in the night to face change unafraid. Nightingale, nightingale, nightingale. Home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing betrayal far, far away. Home is the knowledge heaven is near. Home's the end of the fray. Home is my heart's land, home's where I am. Nothing can dim the light of my soul. Home is forever, home day. Home's a heart that is whole. Often I dream that life is a play, laughter forever and skies never gray. But when I'm silent, free from all care, I discover my home's everywhere. Home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing betrayal far, far away. Home is the knowledge